So we're going to look at how an amateur, a pro, and a master like to use techniques in graphic design. And then you can actually see where you fall into the 3 categories in today's video: amateur, pro, or master. So the first area of design we're going to look at through the eyes of an amateur, a pro, and a master is the use of white space. Often, but of course not always, an amateur wouldn't consider white space as something that is that important. Heck, they might even think that negative space is the same thing as white space. But that's a different story for a different video. The amateur will often instinctively want to fill up as much of the white space as possible, thinking that it's just the best approach. But this isn't how 99% of designs should actually be approached, however. The pro designer understands that white space allows a design to breathe, and also opens the door for design principles to work, such as proximity and also flow. Not to mention hierarchy. Gotta love hierarchy. And as you can see on this second design, the viewing experience is more comfortable and we can actually distinctly make out grouped objects that relate to each other. But how does a master designer actually expand on this? Now if you look at the pro design, it seems very static, almost as if the viewer is stuck in one spot. However, if we then move and look at the master design, we instinctively start on the left, the bottle gives us forward motion to the right, and then we move through the white space to the next group of objects. And finally, we finish with the social account links in the bottom right. The master designer actually knows how to utilize design objects and shapes to actually take the viewer through the white space on a journey. That's the key difference here, and it's how you can master white space. Okay, cool, but what about personality on a design? How does an amateur, a pro, and a master designer actually approach this? Well, an amateur might very well make a design that is technically quote-unquote good, but it might very well lack any personality or emotional direction, and that's a big problem. It can seem cold, it can seem robotic, almost as if it's been thrown together without much thought at all. This amateur design is more or less technically passable, but it lacks any intrigue and personality. It doesn't make me enthusiastic about growing my digital business, and it just seems pretty cold. But then we come to the pro designer. Now the pro designer, they will understand the target audience of a design and then actually create emotional responses via color, typography, shape psychology, and so on. And this in turn adds a deeper personality to the design. And this website here is a good example of just this. The designer knows that black is often used to suggest strength, modernity, and sophistication. And this would actually be perfect for a high-tech and expensive mouse company. The layout is minimal, which pursues that modern and sophisticated ideology. And then the design is accented with a cyan blue. This blue can actually be seen again as modern, technological, and it would fit right into this niche sector. But how does a master level designer actually improve this already good approach? A master will often do a few things extra. Firstly, they have the power to make their designs iconic through things like humor or just being simply original. This DHL design, for example, plays on the question of what came first, the chicken or the egg. And this is a clever and a funny design approach, and it's how the master designer steps outside of the rigid and serious approach to graphic design. Now it doesn't have to be humor, of course, because the brief won't always call for that. It might just mean the design is so original that it kind of sticks in the mind of the audience. And this is a skill a master designer will possess. And here's the next amateur design in our third category today. What can you possibly see wrong with it or potentially wrong with it? Now some of you might think or feel this design is off. You might just think there's something not quite right with it for an unknown reason. Well, it might be due to the lack of consistency. You see, we have gradients with bold colors, we have different typeface styles, different casing on the text, and oddly different layout choices. When it comes to consistency, the amateur designer might not have a running theme through the design, and this makes it look unprofessional and it just seems haphazard. This results in an uncomfortable design to look at, and it's often deemed the unprofessional approach to the design. A pro understands that consistency is king in graphic design, and they will use things such as shape, typography, color schemes, etc. to build a running theme. And if you check out this UI layout right here, you can see there is a strong color scheme throughout. We have that hexagonal shape that's been repeated, and we have the same typeface used on the entire design. and it just looks like a more of a well put together design. I'm sure you will agree. But what about the master designer in this instance? Well, they understand everything the pro does, but they can actually have fun with it. They can break the rules at certain junctions, or just add something that goes against the running theme to create a response in the audience or the viewer. For example, right here, the designer has two layouts that use duotone photographs, yet the screen in the middle has a bold graphic style. Yet, it still actually works together well in harmony, but this one in the middle does stand out a bit more. But importantly, why? Because this likely is the most important information on this design layout. So we've arrived at the fourth sector in today's video on how an amateur, a pro, and a master would actually approach certain design situations. So here is a typical amateur design, and as you probably feel or you know, it's way too cluttered, right? It's one of the biggest mistakes an amateur can actually make, and I see it so often. And it also often results in a messy and uncomfortable design to look at. One problem amateur designers face is that they often have amateur or low-grade level clients. And these kind of clients, they often want to fill up as much white space as possible and just make the design seem busy and cluttered for whatever reason. So it's sort of like a troubling situation to be in, but it's one situation designers should strive to get out of. The pro designer will actually start to remove unnecessary objects or elements on their design, and they won't be afraid to do this. When you start to simplify a design and remove things back, you then make better design decisions and choices, and the design just simply becomes more functional in the end. Not to mention, often more visually appealing to look at. The master designer in regard to simplification knows exactly how much to simplify, and can often have fun with chaotic and busy designs if the brief calls for it. Layouts can be one of the worst enemies for an amateur designer when it comes to simplification. And so if you'd actually like to see a complete course by myself on layout design, just check the video on screen. And until next time guys, design your future today.